Well, Adi, thanks so much for taking time to hang with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, David, for having me. I'm really excited to dive in.
Yeah. I want to know the story of when and how you were introduced to yoga and how did it impact your life kind of in those early times when you were introduced to it.
I found the practice, I think, the same way that a lot of people find it, which was through the physical doorway. And I think that that's an important path, and having a foundation of physical health is really the beginning of being able to move into these deeper emotional, spiritual layers. And so I was about, I think, 13 the first time I practiced yoga. And then I became certified at the age of 19, which was super young, in Chicago. And shortly thereafter, went to India, where I spent about 3 months there with my teacher at the ashram in Rishikesh, which is just there in the foothills of the Himalaya. And that's when I really understood the depth of the practice. You know, when you first get started, like I mentioned, you know, there's this superficial layer that we learn about, and being able to safely perform the asanas and all of those things. But then what really fascinated me, and what's really driven my life and what it is that I offer now, is an understanding of the energetics of the practice, and how we can use our body, use our voice as a tool for really opening and getting into the deeper layers of healing energetically. And so that's really what I focus on now in my teachings, and the physical practice was the doorway for that.
Yeah. Did you grow up with, like you said, at 13, you practiced yoga for the first time. Did you grow up with a family that was into that sort of thing, or was that new for you, or you know what I mean? Like, how did that play out? Because that's a big transition from 13 to 19 being certified, going to India, which I've been to India like 9 times myself. So
Me too, 9 times. I just counted.
Yeah. It's an amazing country. So, was that new for your family, or how did that play out?
My mom is a yoga teacher, actually, but she did not get certified until much later. I had the blessing. I grew up actually in Black communities and Black schools. And then where I went to high school was a Jesuit high school, and then I eventually studied at the Jesuit university. And they really emphasize philosophy and lifestyle ethics as the foundation of what it is that they offer. And so they actually had a yoga teacher come to the high school. And so that was the first time was actually through the Jesuits. And that is how I found the practice.
Wow. Now, when you went to India, how did you know, you know what I mean? Like you could have gone to a bazillion places in India. How did you choose the place that you went? How did you know about it? How were you introduced to it?
Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am a Western seeker, and so I wanted to find a program that was Yoga Alliance accredited, because I did have goals for being able to offer in different ways in the United States and around the world. And so being a Yoga Alliance accredited program was important. And at that time in India, there weren't that many that were Yoga Alliance accredited. And so I found my teacher in that way, and studied with him. And it was an interesting story, actually, because the first time that I was in India, a lot of my colleagues that were there studying with me took names from my teacher. And I did not want to take a name the first time that I went. I didn't feel aligned with him. I wasn't ready to make that level of a commitment to him, you know, as a disciple, really, which is what the naming process really is about. And so it took me a couple of trips before I finally surrendered and asked him formally to be my guide and teacher. And that's when I received my name. But I found him. It all started with a Google search in my little hippie casita here in Costa Rica, and that's how I found my teacher.
And what does that mean? Because I'm ignorant when it comes to this. What does it mean to take a name, from someone like that? What does that mean for you legally? What does it mean for just your rest of your life? How does that play out?
So it's a rebirth. So in the yoga philosophy, we talk about samskara. And so the normal person in their life, they're born and then they receive a lot of conditioning, right? Whether that be from their parents, from the schools, from the government, from where it is that they grow up. They're shaped. And without any say in how that's done, right? The religion that you're introduced to, all of these different components that happen early in our lives. And really by the time we're about 7 years old, we are who we are, right? And so the normal human being from the point that they turn about 7 years old, they're on a trajectory based on their conditioning and follow a path that's been laid out to, for them based on that conditioning. And so the yoga practitioner, there's an interruption. There's a recognizing that the state of our mind, the state of our emotional body, our emotional system is a product of conditioning, and that we have the ability to actually start to see that conditioning from a third party perspective and make choices around who it is that we want to be moving forward. And so when you take a name, it is a commitment and a deep spiritual rebirth where you are taking radical responsibility for your life, that you are committing to shedding the substance of the ego, which is this conditioned process, these patterns of mind, these patterns of emotion. You're committing to shedding that and to allowing your life to become a devotion to God, and that you are taking responsibility and are going to be moving forward in your life in a way that you are developing conscious choice around how it is that you make your decisions. And so rather than being a victim of your conditioning, it's a big day in deciding that today, when you take that name, is the time that you're ready to move forward with awareness. So, yeah.
Wow. And another these questions, I apologize if they're ignorant, because it's just out of my, this is what I do when I interview people, as I learn, so do you provide names for people that you now train? That
No, I don't. I've had several students ask, but I just had my 30th birthday. And I'm so blessed to have been bestowed with so much support and love and wisdom in my life. And I think I need at least like a half a head of gray before I have any business naming anyone.
Well, I've got a whole head of gray, so I could be.
All right, well, maybe you could load me some.
Yeah. I'll give you a lot of names.
Yeah, I don't feel, I would not describe myself by any stretch of the imagination as an enlightened being, and really that is the. For most people that take a name, they're working with a teacher that has arrived, that has a stillness and is able to maintain that third-party perspective, and is really dwelling in a different state of consciousness. And while I'm really confident in my ability to support the people that I support, the concept of giving a name for me still just would feel very ego-based. And so maybe one day I'll arrive, but I don't think anytime soon. So.
Okay, so I was actually a Christian pastor for over a decade. And so a lot of my work in India has been humanitarian work with people. And so I would work with organizations, Christian organizations. We'd go into a lot of remote villages. I've spent very little time in cities. And so there would be this moment where, I don't know if it's true for all Indian families, but for Christian Indian families, they wouldn't name the child until their first birthday. And so I remember like my second trip, I've got a team of 25 people from my church, and the pastor says, hold this child. What do you want to name them? The family wants you to name them. And I'm looking at him with my wide eyes going, I don't know.
It's a big responsibility.
Ralph? How about Ralph? I mean, I literally just threw it with my hands up in the air. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, pick a Bible name. Jezebel. I don't know. Anyway, so I've been there, I know what that feeling is like. It is a wild feeling. So there are multiple people in India that I have named. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Not because I'm enlightened, but just because I was put on the spot.
Yeah, happens.
So now you are in Costa Rica. Now I heard you say that you were in Costa Rica prior to going to, how did you go to Costa Rica? Tell me the story. I want to know this. You're in Costa Rica right now.
Yeah. So I graduated from college, from Loyola University in Chicago with the Jesuits, as I mentioned, in 2011. And very shortly thereafter, I moved to Costa Rica. I worked on a butterfly farm and with a rainforest regeneration project. And then I got hired by a nonprofit to start a after school program for a very, very rural and poor community here in Costa Rica. And so they literally sent me down here with like a backpack full of construction paper. It was my job to create a program. So I lied a little bit. It's true. I lied. I said I spoke Spanish, and at that time I kind of thought I did, but I really didn't. And so I dove into the
burrito, taco, and quesadilla do
exactly.
not Spanish, okay?
Right. So I was a little arrogant at that point. A lot of things, I came in with an S on my chest. This community was gonna be better because I was there, and all of these things that we believe when we start to move into this world of service and learn very, very quickly otherwise. But I moved into this community, and I was serving this community, and I was there for a year, and I started the program, and then I just laid the logistical foundation of it, where the place was going to be, the times, getting the students enrolled, the curriculum, all of these different things, and then I educated a local woman on how to do it, and then I went to India, and I went back to the United States after my journey to India, and I started working for an organization where I was leading humanitarian tours all around the world. And so I was working with different organizations that would raise sometimes a lot of money, over $1 million, one of our clients, to do beautiful things abroad. So, and then we would take those funders to see their projects. And so we, throughout those couple of years, I was in the Ecuadorian Amazon with the Kofan people. We opened clinics there and rainforest watch centers to keep an eye out for illegal logging and clean rainwater catchment. I was in Guatemala, built a couple of schools there with funders there. Human trafficking was our focus in India, in Kolkata, which is near Bangladesh there in the northeast corner. And here in Costa Rica as well, we built a community center for the indigenous. And so I had this lifestyle, and at that point I was 22 or however old I was. I was traveling constantly. I was in Bangkok, I was in Phnom Penh, I was in New York, I was in LA, I was in DC, I was back in Indianapolis, which is where I'm from, and just did this really intense travel schedule and was in these high poverty areas. And it was heartbreaking. And I would also, with my husband, we weren't married at the time, but it was difficult because I would go into Kolkata, India, into the red light districts. And then I'd come home to my husband, and I've had this intense traumatic experience, and I feel shame that I feel traumatized because I'm with these girls that were just rescued from the human trafficking industry, and I'm feeling bad. And it's like, what does that even mean? And I just need to toughen it up and trying to restore harmony with my husband after I'm having these intense experiences. So I did that for 2 years, and so thankful that I have that foundation and saw the world and learned a lot about humanitarian give back. And then couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't take it anymore. So I moved back to Costa Rica at that point and started my company. And that was in 2014. And so I've been owning and operating our organization here in Costa Rica since 2014.
So you originally went there to teach students, but then it sounds like you just had a connection with the place and a desire to go back there to teach yoga. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are here it's the Southern Caribbean coast. We've got a huge Jamaican influence and the indigenous influence and expats. And it's just one of the most beautiful, I've really blessed. I've seen a lot of places around the world. It's by far my favorite. And yeah, I tried to move back to Indianapolis. It's hard to live in the Southern Caribbean of Costa Rica and then move back to Indianapolis. My mom is still working on me. Maybe one day I'll surrender and move back. But for now, I'm very, very happy here. So.
And how do you legally do that in terms of staying in the country? Is it because you have a business, or how does it work?
Yeah, so we have technically we're tourists. We have to leave every 3 months. is how that works, but you can legally operate a business here. And yeah, we're on track to become residents. We have land here and have roots, and we just need to go through the process of becoming residents. But it's quite easy for Americans anywhere around the world, really, as we know. It's an incredible blessing to figure all those things out.
So tell me what you're doing now in Costa Rica, because you've been there, what, 6 years now, full time?
Mm-hmm. Something like that, yeah.
Okay. So tell me what you're doing there.
So 2 years ago, we started the SoulWork Jungle Ashram. So I partnered with an American gentleman here that had a huge piece of land and wanted to develop it, but didn't have a partner that he was confident in that could actually deliver and bringing groups to him. And so he wanted to work with somebody that was more established in order to get that started. So I walked up to it's like an incredible story. I walk up there, he barely knows me. I have a reputation in the community, but other than that, didn't know anything about me. And I kind of looked around and I want this here and I want this there and I need 28 people and I need a house for my faculty and I need a kitchen here and a yoga platform there. And that's what I need. And he was like, okay. And I'm just kind of looking at this guy like he's crazy. And then sure enough, 6 months later, there it is, my freaking permaculture yoga ashram. So it's just insane that it's worked out the way it has. And with it, that's the cherry version. I mean, there's obviously
a lot of challenges, of course.
There's a lot of challenges, of course, but yeah. So we have the SoulWork Jungle Ashram here, and we welcome groups throughout the year. We have 200-hour yoga teacher training immersion programs. We have trauma-informed yoga teacher trainings. We have silent retreats, and yeah, we host mostly women from all around the world for these intensives, and really focus on taking them on a journey from deep spiritual inquiry to empowered entrepreneurship. So I educate on the techniques and practices of yoga. We talk about social justice. We talk about the ethics of give back. And I really work to empower the women that I work with financial competency and really getting skills to transform their passion into successful entrepreneurship through the practices of yoga or these alternative healing techniques. Really finding a way to actually sustain themselves as healers out in the world doing that work. So,
And when you talk about that, you mean just teaching them even just business skills, it sounds like. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's something that we focus on a lot here that I think is really different because it's important. I think that, we talk about the market being saturated and, if you're talking about a yoga teacher trying to get a job at a studio, of course, that's really difficult. And one of the things that we talk about is this, the competition and theory of competition, and that when you actually take a step above kind of where everybody else is operating, there's a lot less competition there. And for me to try and make good money as a yoga teacher in Indianapolis, working at a yoga studio, I mean, of course, that would be almost impossible. But if I'm creating a business in Costa Rica and my permaculture farm and, kind of operating at a different level and keeping my mind open, I really have been able to build a thriving business with that model. And so just kind of supporting people and thinking outside of the box a little bit, and freedom entrepreneurship and lifestyle design, and all of these kind of new paradigm ways of thinking about how it is that we can support ourselves and our families. So.
What are some of the creative ways that you're teaching people that they can kind of rise above the competition? What does that look like to rise above the competition in the yoga teaching world?
I think, similar practices across the board, but really being clear about your niche, really figuring out what exactly it is that you're good at. And something that we teach in our programs and what happens earlier is we actually talk about shadow work in the wounds, and how that very oftentimes is the exact place where we can draw inspiration in building our business. So just to give you an example, I had a student of mine that came through one of my programs, and she had breast cancer when she was 20, and they had to remove one of her breasts. And of course, that was, traumatic for her. And during our program, she came up with this idea that she wanted to host circles for women once they found out that they were diagnosed, through the process of having the breast removed and then after, so that there was like a spiritual community, and not just a spiritual community, but a spiritual community with this kind of hippie vibe, right? Because that's how people are thriving now, is you're coming together and you're burning candles and you're in nature and, ancient songs and weaving in these indigenous components of practice, or the yogic way is really attractive, and people really feel connected to that. I think a lot of people have trauma around the traditional Christian model because it wasn't a choice for them. And I think some people leave it and then choose it and come back, and it's really powerful. But I think that can be a trauma, that to have kind of this religion forced upon you if it doesn't really resonate. And so choosing this different spiritual path is really, really powerful for people. And so she came up with this business model while she was with me, and we fleshed it out and talked about it and how we can market it, how we can do this. And and she went back and is supporting women that are going through that struggle, and it came from her own wound. And so we really educate on that. How is it that we can transform our trauma, transform our wounds into ways that we can actually give back out in the world?
Mm-hmm. Would you say that a Christian experience in your early years was wounding to you? Did you find that to be a challenge for you personally?
I did not. I am lucky in that, and I was raised with a lot of pride and an understanding of my family line and family history. And I do think there was a period of my life, and in college most specifically, I studied Western philosophy. And so there was a point where I moved away from my faith and just wanted to believe myself rather than, I wanted to make sure that the choice, that what it is that I was practicing and what it is that I was preaching, came from a conscious choice rather than just something I'd been told. And so, but I had a very loving introduction to Christianity, and with my grandmother, and very fond memories of going to church and all of those things. But there was definitely a point in my life where I fought with that. I wanted to make sure that that it was something that felt good to me, and that just because I grew up in Indiana with white Anglo-Saxon Protestant parents and grandparents, that I refused to accept that somehow I'd been born into the right way and that was the only right way, and I really needed to grapple and have that struggle with my faith in my life. Yeah.
How do you integrate? Because it sounds like Jesus's or Christian faith is a part of your life even still now. How do you integrate that with the yogic teachings and philosophies, or do you?
Yeah, so I actually spent some time in Srinagar, which you may or may not know is an area in northern India, and some people believe that Jesus is actually buried there. And there's actually books and all kinds of interesting ideas around that is where he was during his missing years, and that he was, in India studying. And so it's really interesting, and there are interesting parallels between when we look at the teachings of Jesus and when we look at the teachings of yoga. And so with the teachings of yoga, the primary focus of what it is that we're doing as yoga practitioners is identifying with the Western, with the inner witness. And so what that means is that we ask the question, what is permanent in you in the yoga philosophy, right? So your body's always changing, your mind's always changing, your emotions are always changing. So what is it that's permanent in you? And the answer to that with the yogic philosophy is the witness, that there is some all-conscious being inside of you that is watching the fluctuations of your life unfold. And that the witness inside of me is actually the same as the witness inside of you, right? And so that we share this consciousness that is watching our lives unfold, and that when we look at Islam, or when we look at Christianity, when we look at these different religions, that is God, right? That is God. And so when Jesus shares that he is God, when Jesus shares, behold, the kingdom of God is within you, that this actually completely aligns with the teachings and the practices of yoga. And so when we look at the ethical commitments, when we look at his, the way that he lived his life, it's in perfect alignment with the yogic philosophy. And so I've been taught, and I'm not sure what, your school of thinking is, but I've sat with different thinkers and teachers and leaders in the Christian faith, and have explained to me that, Jesus being the bridge from this human experience into, the kingdom and the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
And I, believe that there are many different walks and paths to arrive there, that Jesus and having a teacher like that, I mean, he was the first master I was introduced to, absolutely. But that yes, that there are many different ways to dance with the divine, and that his teachings were incredible and 100% in line. But we just don't teach, Jesus as being the primary teacher. That there are many, but it all falls together very, very beautifully.
Yeah. How is your approach to yoga unique? Because I've watched quite a bit of your videos. I've read quite a bit of your material, and you have and it doesn't come across as, pompous or prideful in any way, but just saying, oh no, there's a uniqueness to what we're doing. It's not just, these different positions, and, talk to me about that.
Mm-hmm. So I think that what's really special about what we do in the West is that we are rooted in lineage. And so I think that is something that has been lost. When we look at the history of yoga and how it's developed in the West, just here in the last 20 or 30 years, there are now, I don't want to use the word white, but I'll just say it. There's white teachers, right, that are educating the next line of teachers, and I'm one of them, right? And that is very, very new. So it was a series of Indian teachers that came with lineage from India, that were offering the teachings, and then they offered those teachings to the West, and then from there now they've been offered again and again. So we're kind of in the third or fourth generation from the Indian guru, and the teachings being taught in the West. And so with that, I think that there's a lot of depth that can be lost just in translation, right? It's a natural thing. And so it's become more of this physical practice, a lot of the Sanskrit and the philosophy and the understanding of the eight-limbed path, all of that has been lost. The Sanskrit songs, the mantra, all of these things. I think what's different about us is that my lineage comes directly from India, comes directly from my teacher, and that he actively guides and supports me regularly. And so we are still very much so connected with the ancient teachings as they are in India, as well as educating on these Western business practices and things that really support people in building a powerful business. But that we have depth, that I have been blessed by my teacher to offer these teachings, and that there is accountability and integrity, and just a lot of depth to what it is that we offer.
Mm-hmm. So people come and not only train with you, but they can just go for some sort of retreat, right? Not just to be trained as a yoga teacher, but just go and experience what you have to offer. Is that correct?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And I know you do some work here in the US, a few retreats here, but also retreats in Costa Rica. The best URL for them to visit, because I know you've got several. SoulWork.com?
Yes, so SoulWork.com is going to be where people can find all of our upcoming retreats, our trainings. We have the silent retreat, which is a really powerful opportunity to dive into a lot of the emotional detox later this year. And then we also have the SoulWork Academy online, which is a membership-based tuition at $9 a month, and we're offering yoga teacher training, quality education, philosophy, the postures, everything is available there as well. And then we have the film that just came out this week, actually, which is really exciting. So there's all kinds of different ways that people can collaborate with us, and free trainings on the website, all kinds of beautiful things there at soulwork.com.
Tell us about the film. Why did you create this? What is it? I've watched it. It's amazing. Tell us about the heart behind it.
So the film, the idea is that, through social media, through email marketing, all these different tools that we have to connect with our audience, there's really no substitute for really seeing and feeling and being with the process here in Costa Rica. And the film just felt like a really, really important anthem for this generation of leaders that are emerging and weaving together a spiritual life with a thriving business, really moving into this new paradigm way of being of service and creating businesses that are both profit-based as well as are serving the community in a powerful way. And so we really wanted a super visual and emotional way to connect with our students. Our students are super proud of it, that have participated with us, and also to call in people and to really give people a taste of who we are and what we're about, to call in the tribe that we will be working with in the future.
Audie, I'm blown away by what you're doing. I mean, you're an adventurist.
Oh, thanks,
Without
David.
a doubt. I mean, and I love your heart behind, hey, got to make a living, want to help people make a living, and want to use tools to do it, have a value for the traditions and lineage that are super important to you. And I love your heart behind, okay, what's sustainable? You know, what's sustainable in terms of lifestyle? What's sustainable in terms of the actual physical property that you have? And the ashram there is just gorgeous. I mean, my goodness, the video that I've seen is just beautiful, man.
Oh, thank you
Yeah.
so much, David. I appreciate that a lot.
So beautiful. So, all right. So we'll put, get people going to soulwork.com. You've got to sign up and get access to watch the film. Let's see, that's about 40 minutes. Am I right? About a 40 minute
Yeah, it's right under 50 minutes.
Yeah. So you'll love it. It's like a 50-minute meditation, just soaking in the beauty of Costa Rica. I started to sweat from the humidity just watching it.
Yeah, I could relate to that. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being with us, Audie.
Oh, thank you, David.